Morning. So this question is from NCERT Exemplar, problem number 3.9. It's a one-dimensional question, as you can see, and the focus of the question is on finding, which of the following is a correct choice. Okay, so a motion is described in a particular manner. You can see the equation the way it is being described. So the description is t minus sine t. So that's a time dependence of the position. Okay, that's your position. Now, if you notice, this is not a straightforward uniform motion where displacement is given as, maybe velocity into time, or in the case of uniform accelerated motion, x is equal to ut plus half at square. So this question is not that category. It is very different because the expression is not algebraic. You have trigonometric expression also. So that makes it complicated, and therefore this represents a non-uniform accelerated motion. Why I say accelerated? Because you can find a double derivative, which is the acceleration. Now let's look into the first part of it. Okay, so the first part says the displacement is always greater than 0 with respect to time. That is, it is positive for t greater than 0, which means we have to show, if I look into this expression, I'm looking at a, I have to say whether this is true or false. So x is equal to t minus sine t is given. I have to prove this first expression. So let us see. Is t greater than sine t for t greater than 0, right? Now we know what is the value of sine t always. It is always between 1 and minus 1. You cannot have a sine t greater than 1 or less than minus 1. So we know this particular expression is always between the minus 1 and 1. But what we are given is this expression, right? So can we adjust this expression in certain manner? And I can write this as, let's add this t. So what I'm doing now is, because I know this is known to me from my knowledge of trigonometry, okay, I'm going to convert this into this expression. So I'm practically doing x is equal to t minus something which always resides between minus 1 to 1. And if you're doing inequalities in class 12th or preparing for JEE maths, you would know the concept of interval and sets and all that, right? So these are the numbers which are getting subtracted by t. If you notice, if you take a number, for example, let's take a number like minus 0.5. Okay, let's say we take t. Can we take t as minus 0.5? That's my first thing. Sine can be, but what we need to do is we need to put some values of t. Can I take t as minus 0.5? I can't, because time cannot be negative. T has to be greater than 0. So let me put a value as t is equal to 0.1. So 0.1 minus a value which resides between minus 1 and 1. This is for sure. Let's take minus 0.5. Minus 0.5. What will you get? You will get 0.6 as the value of x, which is greater than 0. But wait, let's take some more values. Let's take t is equal to 0.1 second. But let's take the value between minus 1 and 1 to be 0.5 this time. So 0.1 minus 0.5, right? So what do you get? Negative answer, which means, it appears to me, this will be 0.4 seconds, right? Which is less than 0, not possible. So you're not allowed to take the value of the sine t, which I took as 0.5. Any value of sine t which will be above 0.1 will make this expression negative, because 0.1 minus a number which is greater than 0.1 will make it less than 0, negative. So whatever you take here has to be greater than 1, right? It has to be greater than 0.1. So we started with the fact that this number can be between minus 1 and 1, but now we have realized that 0.1, right? For example, if you subtract it, it will become negative, right? So you cannot have certain values associated with sine t. You cannot. For example, I take the value of t to be 2 seconds, right? 2 seconds. And if I write this 2 minus something, right, I will get a positive number because this number is always between minus 1 and 1. And even if you put minus 1 or you put 0 or 1, my answer is going to be a positive number. So 2, I don't have to worry. Where I need to worry is the fact that this range is minus 1 to 1. One of the ranges of the x is minus 1 to 1, and then it is getting subtracted by a number, and we want this whole thing to be positive, right? So let's say t, therefore, if we have to write t, the t then has to be written in a certain manner, right? Which is this t is getting subtracted maximum by what? It is getting subtracted by minus 1, and also maximum it is getting subtracted by 1, right? So this has to be greater than 0. This is our expectation because x has to be greater than 0, and this also needs to be greater than 0. So which means t is greater than minus 1 second. Makes no sense. Minus 1, right? And t is greater than 1, which is what makes sense. Which means if t is always greater than 1, if t is always greater than 1, x will be positive. So this is false, right? T has to be greater than 1 for this expression to be positive, right? If t is greater than 1, 1 minus sine, which is nothing but minus 1 to 1, can only become positive if your value of t is greater than 1. Okay, if t is 1.1, you will easily get an answer, right? So I hope this is clear in your mind that the position of the body will be positive only after the first second. Rethink about it closely, and if there is a doubt, please put in the comment section that you don't understand it. I will help you understand it. Okay, that's your part number 1. That's part of the story. Let's talk about the second story, and this is what I will do. Since in the interest of space, I will just rub this off. I hope this position thing is clear to you. It was more trigonometric and knowledge of a sine function where it is from minus 1 to 1, and then of course greater than 0 and subtraction and all that, right? So that was pretty straightforward, and I won't say straightforward, it was at least a bit tricky because it involved a bit of mathematics knowledge for you to be able to analyze and be able to understand the concept of sine t and then subtraction and stuff like that. I'll just take 1 minute to get rid of this stuff, and then we can proceed with the second part of the question, which is to do with velocity. Now velocity is a derivative, right? And then again we will take a derivative and use the same rule, by the way. Okay, now the only thing is a derivative, if it is greater than 0, means the slope is greater than 0, which means it is a positive slope. That is what we need to focus on. So let's say I move to the next part and say velocity. So which is velocity, so I'm referring to b now. Let me convert it to b, and the velocity is greater than 0 and the t is greater than 0. True or false? Now I know my displacement or position, is t minus sine t, and dx by dt is equal to 1 minus cos t. Now I have to prove that this is greater than 0, which means velocity is greater than 0 when t is greater than 0. So let's say t greater than 0 means what? This is an angle, some angle. Irrespective of the value you put, the value is going to be either maximum 1 minus 1 or 1 minus 1, right? So this will become 2 and this will become 0. So we can say now safely that the velocity will be greater than 0. So if you say t is negative, this is not allowed because t cannot be negative. So I can't take this anyway, right? I can't use this because I've taken t as a negative number, and I can't take t as a negative number. I just need to prove that 1 minus cos t is greater than 0 for t greater than 0. I cannot take the cos t value as minus 1 because that requires t to be in certain range. But let's say I will revisit this, but let's come back to this problem. We want this to be greater than 0, which means 1 is greater than cos t and cos t is less than 1. Now if you look into the graph of the cosine, right, and if I were to draw this, cos t is positive from 0 to 90, and then this is minus 1 at 180, right? So cos is less than 1 here also, right, which is negative part, but and it is after 0 degrees it becomes less than 1. So cos t is less than 1, and the angle therefore is pi by 2 to 0 at t equal to pi by 2. So I'm not included, I can include this, it becomes 0. So at t is equal to 0, cos t becomes, sorry, at t is equal to 0, cos t becomes 1, and at t is equal to 90 degree, cos t becomes 0. Clear in your mind what we are doing? So we are saying that from 0 to 90 degree, if t is from 0 to 90 degree, the value is going to be it'll satisfy, right? If t is between this, right? So t is between pi by 2 and 0, right, will mean that the cos t is going to be less than 1. Let's look into 0 to 90 degree, right? If you put a value of, say, this particular expression, right, here the cos becomes negative, right? So this thing becomes negative. So 1 minus a negative number, 1 minus a negative number in the second quadrant will become a positive number. So can we say that the velocity is here also some positive number getting subtracted from 1, very small value of cos t getting subtracted, maybe 1 by root 2, root 3 by 2, and then 1 minus a large negative number, again minus 1 by root 3, whatever values you have. This is 90, 120, 115, then so again this is positive. So we can say that the velocity can be 0 also, remember that, but here they have given not greater than, equal to, they've only given greater than. So let's give them this benefit of doubt and say that this could be probably right, because the value of 1 minus cos t, irrespective of whatever you put here, will never be negative, because this thing fluctuates from minus 1 to 1, right? And if you subtract 1 minus a negative number, you will get something which is greater than 0. If you do 1 minus 1, worst you get is 0. So the worst is the velocity could be 0, at certain point t is equal to 0. But he has only talked about t greater than 0, so let's stick to that. So this could be correct. Let's go to the acceleration. The acceleration is C part, which I'm doing now. It is a double derivative of this particular quantity, right? So I'll just put it as minus cos t as plus sine t, because it's a derivative of velocity, dv by dt, right? Now the value of sine, if t is greater than 0, right? T is greater than 0 for me is angles. It cannot be positive at all the places, right? Because sine is only positive in the first quadrant. So between maybe t and second quadrant also. So t is greater than, between pi and 0. It is going to be a positive, and after that it will become negative. So for all t's, acceleration will not be positive. For t greater than pi, the acceleration will become negative, which is the slope of the curve. Okay, so acceleration is clear now. Let's talk about the final part, which is d, right? Now we have also done some analysis on velocity, which I will repeat. I think that this will bring more clarity. The idea is just not to solve this question, but help you understand how do you think about these questions, right? It says a range is there, okay? Now let's think what was happening. This is your position, and let me do one thing, right? Let me just write this as dx by dt is equal to velocity instantaneous. This is instantaneous at t, 1 minus cos t, right? We know cos t can be between 1 and minus 1. This is our knowledge of trigonometry. Let's do one thing. Let's subtract 1 from all the terms. So 1, I'm going to do this in step number 2. 1 minus 1 less than equal to cos t minus 1. We will have to invert this because we have 1 minus cos t, right? So I will write this as plus 1 minus, right? Because I've subtracted 1 minus the term. So 1 minus cos t is less than equal to 1 minus 1. So this becomes 2 is less than cos t is less than equal to 0. I think the only thing is cos t is less than 0. This doesn't make any sense. We just need to change this and say cos t will now be between 1 minus cos t lies between 0 and 2. That is the meaning of this, right? So cos t resides between minus 1 and 1, and therefore 1 minus cos t has to reside, right? Because if you put the value of cos t equal to minus 1, which is t is equal to 180 degrees, right? What happens to 1 minus cos t? It becomes 1 minus minus 1, 2, right? So your 1 minus cos t fluctuates always between 0 and 2, because at t equal to 0 it will become 0. So 1 minus cos t always fluctuates between 0 and 2, proven. And 1 minus cos t is vt, right? So D is also correct and B is also correct. I hope this question gave you some insight. In the class 12th, you have something called as inequalities. If you're preparing for JEE Mains mathematics, we have used a lot of knowledge of, not a lot, but some knowledge of inequalities and knowledge of trigonometry to solve this problem. This is a typical JEE Mains type of problem which you can expect. If you're preparing for JEE Mains, please ensure that complete exemplar is done. If you don't do your exemplar well, you're not going to be successful in JEE Mains. A lot of questions are from JEE NCERT Exemplar directly. So maybe similar questions, if not identical. Keep on watching my video. I'm going to bring up some terrific questions on mathematics, chemistry and physics. We already have 2000 videos on this channel which are helping thousands of students, and millions of people are watching it. But my request to each one of you is please do subscribe, otherwise it's very disheartening. So thank you very much for your time, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you.